Send in the red shirts.
Hey everyone, it's Qstorm. So listen, after 12 years, we finally got Star Trek back on TV, where, to be honest, other than the TOS iteration of Star Trek in the films, I think TV is where Star Trek tends to shine. And as far as I'm concerned, last night Star Trek was right back on track. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm a tough customer. I am very hard to please. I don't know if that's something that should be attributed to me. I personally think that pop culture in the last 2 decades or so, I just think it's taken a downhill turn. So I don't think I'm hard to please. I just think it's hard for these producers in Hollywood to actually put out a good product. Having said that, I was doing a lot of complaining on the Red Shirt Show. Myself, my companions, Big Sexy and Craig J, we were a little unsure about the look of these Klingons. I complained about the uniforms. I complained about, Spock being related to Michael Burnham in some way, not related, but being part of that family, about Burnham attending the Vulcan Academy. I was just concerned about the timeline, how they were going to screw up the timeline in general. And a lot of that was a concern. It played out on screen. The Klingons looked nothing like I know. The uniforms that the Klingons were wearing, or the costumes the Klingons were wearing, nothing that I'm familiar with. The bridge of the ship doesn't look like it's in continuity. The uniforms, I complained. I made the joke that I thought they looked like drum majors. All of that is still the case. That has not changed. I'm still not happy about that. But you know what? There was enough of Trek's DNA in there to make me happy. I thought the first episode, I gave it 4 out of 5 reels. The second episode, I give it 3 out of 5. I can live with paying $6 a month to see this show if the quality of this show is maintained throughout the 12-episode run. Okay, let's talk about things that I didn't like. Okay, I've pretty much gone over all of those. The Klingons, the Starfleet uniforms. I've covered all that. There's also the fact that the technology looks far superior to what we saw in the original series. Okay, I grant that. That was the same problem I had with Enterprise. I don't know how to solve for that because our technology has improved, and to try to do something where it falls in line with the original series, it's not going to sell because the younger audience, the people, people like me that have grown up on Trek, we're a lot older. The younger audience is not going to buy that. I didn't buy the bridge of the original series when I was younger watching it, but I still liked Trek. But I can't put those expectations on the new audience out there today that they're going to buy scaling down the technology so that it fits into a timeline. I have to accept that. For me, the opening of a Star Trek show is a signature in of itself. This I love the simplicity of the visuals. It had sort of a blueprint or schematic type of thing that unfolds, or you see the graph lines creating the image. And I like that kind of, like I say, blueprint building thing. It makes me think of something that's being built, something that's being put together. And that's what this show is about. It's the Federation in its infancy, as far as I'm led to believe. But I have to say, what I didn't like about this opening was the music. It didn't really build like all of the other themes did. It kind of just meandered. It felt like it was going to a build. And then all of a sudden we just hear the Star Trek flourish. And that's it. So the music could use some work on the opening. In terms of the show, I thought the music was pretty good, or above good for the typical hour-long drama on TV. I know it's 10 years before Star Trek, before Kirk and Spock, but we don't know at what age. I don't think they determine what age Kirk and Spock are when they say 10 years before. Having said that, I take it to mean the Federation at its infancy. And I just thought there were maybe way too many aliens on the Shenzhou Bridge serving in Starfleet for this to be so early on in the Federation or in Starfleet's history. So I noticed that. It really has the style, and it feels like it has the style and the look of Kelvin Shrek, the J.J. Abrams reboots, with the lens flares, which they weren't so bad. I didn't mind those, but the canted angles, where the camera is like kind of like this. But again, the majority of my solid complaints have to do with how it doesn't look like it is 10 years before what we know to be the original series. But again, I say neither did Enterprise, and be that as it may. I want to tell you what I liked about the show. What I liked about the show was the visuals were off the chart. I felt like I was watching a movie. It was very cinematic the way they shot it. Outside of the canted angles, yeah. But the lighting was fantastic. The bridge was a little dark, but hey, we all remember Generations, right? When we saw the Enterprise D in that movie, it looked like it was a power outage or something. So there's a precedent for that. The pacing was first rate. There was, at least for the first episode, there were no slow moments in that first episode. Everything really snapped right along. It moved along. And the evidence of that for me was the first scene when Burnham and JoJo are walking in the desert. In that one scene, they really did a masterful job of establishing that relationship. I mean, it was all exposition, but it just flowed organically. It flowed naturally. I felt like I knew who those two characters were just by watching that first scene. I love the fact that this show didn't have the Klingons speaking in English to each other. It was all Klingonese, or the Klingon language, and they subtitled it. Now that means we have to work a little bit more, but Trek people are not lazy people. We're willing to put in the intellectual work. So I love that. And that's one improvement, I would say, over anything else I've seen in Star Trek. And I have to admit, like I said, I didn't like the way the Klingons looked, but I found myself intrigued by the Klingons here. I found the race to be something I wanted to know more about. I thought they were very well fleshed out. Again, I got to put aside the fact that they don't look like what I know to be Klingons, but just as an alien race, I found them to be very intriguing. I wanted to know more about them. They reference Kahless. They reference Sto-vo-kor. When the captain walks onto the bridge, you hear those traditional ping-ping sounds and those warbly sounds that you heard in the original series. I love that. So what it tells me is that the showrunners do respect the fact that this is Star Trek, that they put some DNA of what we know to be Star Trek into the show. And frankly, I kind of liked the story. I liked seeing that conflict, one of the first conflicts between the Federation and Klingons. One might think that that'd be cliched, that we have seen enough Trek that we don't need to be told that story, but I have to say, I love seeing what caused the Klingons and the Federation to start off on the wrong foot. Now, one thing I did not like necessarily, and it's the same thing I didn't like about Burnham having any ties with Spock, I didn't like the fact that they felt the need to so precisely point to the moment that the Federation and the Klingon Empire went to war. I didn't need to see that. Now, I'm not going to give any spoilers here, so you'll have to watch it for yourself, but that was a little unnecessary to me. Now, the second episode, it wasn't as good as the first, but I still enjoyed it. It dragged a little bit more in spots. There was a lot more exposition, specifically between Burnham and Sarek, and I have to say, I'm not that thrilled with the actor playing Sarek. He comes off as a little more smarmy than logical and unemotional. I still think it was a great episode. I gave it 3 out of 5 reels. Now, again, this is not a spoiler review, but there is a pivotal moment that I predicted, and maybe that gives it away, I don't know. And I am disappointed to be proven right. I am not happy with that. I suspect there may be some repercussions from that. I don't know, but it's something that happens in the latter half of the second episode. I don't want to give it away, but I was pissed to see that happen. One other thing I kind of question is, I question if Michael Burnham's motivations for wanting to strike first at the Klingons, if they were strong enough. Because this is a woman, a human woman, who was raised in the Vulcan tradition of logic. And when we see her in the first show, actually, I myself thought, wow, Sonequa's acting is really stiff here. Then I had to remember, oh, wait, she was raised in the Vulcan environment. So I think that's what she's doing. She's playing off of being raised Vulcan. So the turn that she does, and I didn't give anything away because we see her say, we must fire on them first in the trailers. So the turn that she does, which I knew was coming, I don't think it was motivated enough for her to do away with Starfleet principles and act on something that happened in her past. When she's a Starfleet officer, that's one, and it goes against their protocols to strike first. And two, being raised in the Vulcan tradition. I thought that rang a little hollow, but I understand what they were doing. They just could have, maybe they could have reinforced it a little bit more, why she wanted to strike first. So having said all that, I consider myself a Star Trek fan. I might not know every little minutia, every little detail, every piece of trivia, but I consider myself a Star Trek fan. I also consider myself someone who's hard to please. And I have to tell you that I think if you're a Star Trek fan, you should be able to find something within this show that will bring you back to watching this show. If you are a cinema fan, if you are someone who likes a good story, if you're someone who likes good visuals, I don't see how you can turn your back on this show. And I definitely don't see how you could champion another show that's running. I'm not going to even mention its name. I don't know how you could possibly champion another show that so blatantly borrows from this show, as opposed to, as Trek fans, gathering around this show. Now, I know it's on a paid platform, but we as Trek fans, or fans in general, fanboys, fangirls, we pay for a lot of things that we probably shouldn't have to pay for. I'm not happy about it, but I'm a Trek fan, and I willingly am giving them my $5.99 a month. And the first week is free, by the way. I'm giving them my $5.99 a month because I like the show. I want to see the show. I've been a vociferous critic of the Trek, Kelvin Trek reboots. I've been a critic of Enterprise, but I tell you what, I now have come to a position where, Trek has been so maligned and Trek has become irrelevant. I'm just going to say it's become irrelevant. And that, I think that's been borne out with the 3 reboots. They may have made money at the box office, but they didn't set the world on fire like Wrath of Khan did back in the early to mid 80s. If this is the Trek that they are going to give me, if this is all I got, it's enough for me to be satisfied. Put it another way, while it may not look like Trek, and while you may question the canon, I can tell you this, the spirit of Trek, I saw that in these 2 episodes. Hopefully they can maintain that through the course of this first season. I think it's 10 or 12 episodes, but it's not enough. All my complaints are not enough for me to turn my back on it. The things that are good about this show far outweigh the things that are bad about the show. If the needs of the many are outweighed by the needs of the few. Those few things that I saw, I could glom onto and say, okay, I have something that I can hang my hat on. And real quick, for those of you who might say to me, well, you didn't like the Kelvin reboots, which didn't fall into canon, which have flung away the canon. Why do you like this? Easy. Because these are all new characters. They have a destiny that that the writers have yet to fulfill. They're open, they're tabula rasa, they're blank slates for want of a better term. But if you're going to give me something and you say, this is Kirk, this is Bones, this is Uhura, this is Sulu, then yeah, that has to conform to something that I recognize, because William Shatner and all those guys, they put their foot on those roles. So you can't just throw those guys, those characters on screen with new actors and expect that I'm going to just accept whatever you give me. With Discovery, whole new slate. You can present anything you want to me, and I'll go with you until it just doesn't make any sense. Oh, one last thing I want to say. I wonder and I'd love to get your comments on this. I wonder if all the animosity or all of the reticence for Discovery might be allayed if they had basically taken this story and set it 10 years after TNG, the TNG era, 10 years after Picard. Because I think then a lot of the things they have problems with in terms of how it looks in continuity would be solved. It's legitimate to consider that the uniforms may have changed again in 10 years, that maybe the Klingons evolve a little bit more, or they change. The Klingons have changed before. It's just, I don't like the fact that they changed them 10 years before what we see on TOS. 10 years after the Berman Trek, I think this would work even better. Anything that looks different would be justified. So I think they may have missed the ball on that. I don't know why they went back into the prequel territory, because this would have shown if it had been, I don't know, the 24th or 25th century. Who knows? I'm just saying. I wonder if that would have allayed some of the problems that Trek fans are having, including myself. But again, those problems are minimal compared to what I got. I got good writing, I got good characterizations, I got good plotting, I got good pacing, and I am going to be on this show every week. That other show, you can have it. You can have it. I'm a Trek fan. I'm a red shirt. So Discovery, keep doing what you're doing. I just want you to get better, and you've got a weekly viewer in me.